All righty, Mike, shall we go ahead?
Sure.
Great. Well, hello everyone. I'm Sarah Neiswanger, Director of Industry Engagement with NGA. And thank you for joining us for today's Thirsty Thursday webinar with our guest, Mike Oscar, Director of Government Relations for the American Subcontractors Association. NGA is thrilled to have this partnership established with ASA to bring resources and opportunities like today's presentation to you. If you are an NGA member, you also have access to additional papers and webinars through the members only dashboard. So I encourage you to log in and browse those when you have time. Before we begin, let's talk glass build. If you are already registered to attend or know you're coming, drop a line in the chat for us to see just for fun. Glass Build is taking place November 4th to the 6th in Orlando. Registration is open and there will be so many new things to see on the show floor this year. And one thing I'm particularly excited about is the Skills Challenge. It's a place for glazers to try out their skills, learn some tips, and maybe win some prizes. The Shower Door Design Challenge covers measuring and installing. And then there's the Are You AGMT Ready Challenge that will test you on different elements necessary for that certification. So these will be waiting for you on the trade show floor, so make sure to stop by. In addition, the Glazing Executives Forum, which is now in its 19th year, is being held that Tuesday, November 4th. The program is going to be terrific. Topics like Division 10, contracts and immigration, supply chain realities, and the popular annual construction forecast are part of the general session. Then in the afternoon, we'll have some workshops where you can get a deeper dive into one of three topics, and those are Bluebeam, exit and succession planning, and then Profit First for contractors cash management. So it's going to be hard to choose from that lineup. But registration for Glass Build trade show floor is free for NGA members and just about $100 otherwise. The forum does have an extra fee, so make sure to add it to your trade show pass when you sign up at glassbuildamerica.com. So with that, Mike, I am happy to turn the screen over to you. Tell us a little bit about your background and what you have in store for us today.
Sure. And thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to present to you. It's been about 2 years since I presented to to NGA, and I appreciate the partnership that we have, or the alliance between your association, my association. I serve as the Government Relations Director for the American Subcontractors Association, and I'm proud to say that both of our co-chairs of our Government Relations Committee are glazing contractors, Courtney Little, who's also a member of the NGA, and Gloria Hale. We take not only your priorities seriously, but we have leadership in our committee that also makes it a priority for us as well. So would you like me now to begin to share the screen, Sarah?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, so replace current share, and then I'm going to pull up my screen. Okay. And then we're going to start the slideshow from the beginning. And can you see the slideshow from the beginning? I just want to make sure on your end.
Yep, it looks good.
Okay. Well, listen, I was able to review the presentation that I presented to you back in 2023. I believe it was in February. And I really want to kind of start off where that presentation was, because one of the things that we've been working on as an association, and I'm assuming that you have been paying attention to it as well, is this whole piece of legislation called the One Big Beautiful Bill. That has really been my number one priority on behalf of our members for the last several months. And the biggest priority in that bill is the tax provisions. And I just want to fast forward to show you a slide. We'll get back to this in a minute, but I'll show you here tax reform for the 119th Congress, actually for the several last Congresses, has been a top priority for ASA, especially when it comes to the pass-through deduction, especially looking at the estate tax and the alternative minimum tax for tax extenders to be permanent. But when we had our fly-in this year, I like to show this photo because I think sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words or more. But this is our group. On June the 11th, we were able to go to the White House. And this is really important because it aligns with the One Big Beautiful Bill. As I mentioned, the tax reform positions in that bill were critically important. And I prepared a memorandum for our members that I shared with Sarah that she can share with you. But those provisions that were included in the One Big Beautiful Bill, which relates back to my presentation to you back in 2023, were the following. And that is the Section 199A deduction was now increased to 20%. And it also is remaining permanent. We have a lot of members that are LLCs or S corps or partnerships or sole proprietorships. And this is a 20% pass-through business income deduction that has been made permanent that can be utilized for capital improvements, for budgetary expenditures, for upgrades with technology within your companies. And we also have some members that have multiple LLCs beyond their main business as a construction company, whether it be if they have a trucking company, the material supplies company, a supplies LLC, and all LLCs, and all of them now can take this 20% tax deduction or pass-through deduction, and is now remaining permanent. That is one of the things that we brought up when we went to the White House, because we said we were able to visit with the Office of the Public Liaison and to the members of that team that serve on tax policy for the president. We were able to get that message across that pass-through deduction was very, very important, as are the following points that were included in the One Big Beautiful Bill. And that was the business depreciation was restored to 100%, so 100% bonus depreciation for qualified property placed in service from 2025 through 2029. The R&D deduction is reinstated, allows immediate deduction of US-based research and development expenses, and instead of amortizing over 5 years. And I think that's critically important from your side for the National Glass Association. Also, if you're involved in the glass manufacturing or development, et cetera, that R&D deduction is critically important. Manufacturing expensing extended, media expensing for investments in qualified manufacturing and refining facilities. The marginal tax rates were extended. As this is essential for pass-throughs taxed at the individual level. The estate and gift tax exemption has increased beginning in 2026. The estate and gift tax is permanently increased from $10 million to $15 million and indexed to inflation. This is critically important to our members, especially when it comes to estate planning or succession planning. As like many of you, a lot of our members are generational companies, and passing that down from one family member to another, these deductions are critically important. Also, too, paid family medical leave credit made permanent. You might also be aware of this as well, or maybe not, but the auto loan interest deduction, which allows for $10,000 in interest deduction for U.S. assembled vehicles if you are utilizing them as part of your workforce. If you're providing trucks and you're in a loan situation, now you have the opportunity to deduct it. So I know you hear a lot of noise coming out of Washington, but this is critically important, these tax reform positions. And prior to us going into the meeting with the White House, and the reason I show this photo, was we were contacted by the White House the Monday before our meeting on Wednesday, and were asked whether or not we would endorse the bill. I learned a long time ago that you can't endorse a piece of legislation until you see it in its final draft. And the bill was still being debated. This is June 11th, and the bill went into law July 4th. So we could not give it a full endorsement, but our board met and we talked about how we're going to handle this. And the recommendation that I made that was ultimately approved by the board was that we support the tax reform provisions as we know them in the One Big Beautiful Bill, and we support the president's pro-business agenda. So after our visit, we had a videographer come in from the White House to tape some of our members, and they produced a a video later. And then later that week, over the weekend, many of our members that did produce that video were contacted by Fox News Business for them to be interviewed. And we actually had our Scott Holbrook, one of our members of the committee. He's to my far right in the red tie there, kind of having it with his watch exposed, kind of in a kneeling position. And then in the middle there, Andrew Christ, who is also our current president of ASA, holding the folder, were both interviewed on Fox News explaining why these tax provisions were really important. I show this because it just shows you how, even though you're working through Congress on these very important pieces that are contained within the One Big Beautiful Bill, we had worked with Senator Daines' office, we've worked with Senator Crapo's office, members of the Finance Committee that had oversight over this bill. We met with them, explaining to them why these tax provisions were critically important. Yes, we are subcontractors in the construction industry, so we're not accountants by trade, but these tax provisions are going to have a major importance on our businesses. And like you, as glazing contractors, are equally engaged. So it was not only the opportunity to speak to the members of Congress, but then to have the opportunity to come to the White House and then be asked by the White House to do a video, and then to have our members then get on camera with the news media to highlight these tax provisions, and then to see actually these tax provisions come to fruition post July 4th when it was signed into law. It's very gratifying to see that, because in the noise that you hear, inside or even outside the Beltway, and no matter where you might get your media information, or no matter how you fill your media diet, whether it's CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, regardless, you don't hear stories like this. And so it is gratifying, I'll use that word again, to be able to tell you that we were on the front lines. We took a very strong position. The members here that are shown in this photo represent all aspects of the country, from California to Texas to Minnesota to St. Louis to Philadelphia to Fort Myers, Florida, Little Rock, Arkansas, etc. So it was a real great demonstration of subcontractors throughout the country, 28 in total, that had the opportunity to speak to the White House and had the opportunity to then join the rest of our members on our fly-in. We had a total of 49, a very large fly-in for us in recent years, then to go up on the Hill and continue that discussion. So when you hear about the One Big Beautiful Bill, I'm not saying we supported all the provisions in that, but when you hear about it, especially in the August recess, now that members are home, it's a little quieter here in Washington, which is a good thing. But if you're out and about and you hear about this bill, or you see your member of Congress, or you're listening to the news, or you're reading your newspaper, or however, again, you satisfy your media diet, please be aware of these provisions, because they're critically important, not only for you, but also for us. And I think that's one of the reasons why this alliance is so critically important. Let me step back for a minute, because again, that happened in real time. What I don't want to get into full on all the topics. In my last presentation to you, I kind of went over some of our top priorities, and those priorities primarily have remained the same. But I want to go over some hot button issues that are critically important to you, and kind of satisfy your thirst, to play off the title of this program, Thirsty Thursday, because there's a lot of things that I believe that are happening right now in real time that will satisfy that thirst. One of them being, let's just take a moment to talk about tariffs. And that's critically important right now, because as of August 1st, the tariff rates were imposed on the following countries. If you have access to our ASA today, I highly recommend it. I spend a lot of time on that, myself and my staff that work with the Government Relations Committee, on getting this information out to our members. We try not to editorialize, we try to base it on facts. But in last week's ASA Today, I highlighted that the rates as of August 1st will be imposed on Japan at 15%, products coming in, on European 15%, the UK 10%, in Philippines, anything coming from the Philippines is 19%, Indonesia is going to be 19%. Vietnam is anywhere between 20 and 40%. That means products coming in for those countries that you might be utilizing will be facing that tariff rate. And what does that mean for you and your bottom line? Well, we'll talk about that in just a minute. Additionally, the Secretary of Commerce has initiated investigations under the Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962 to determine the effects of national security of imports of the following products. And they include copper, timber and lumber, semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, trucks, critical materials, commercial aircraft, polysilicon, and unmanned aircraft systems. Now, I realize glazing is not mentioned in here, but we're all part of a larger network within the construction industry, and these materials obviously are critically important to our industry. So as they're making those investigations, they'll determine whether or not, A, if national security is being impacted, but B, are there countervailing or anti-dumping issues as well? And the Section 302 investigations are equally going on. I had the pleasure of working on in 2010 with the International Trade Court dealing with curtain walls that were coming in to the United States from China. And we imposed that sanctions on them because they considered a curtain wall coming from China as one single kit, almost like a kit you would get at IKEA to put something together. And after explaining to the legal counsel of the International Trade Court, along with the justices there, we were able to make the case that a curtain wall is not a kit, and there's multiple parts to that. And I know the curtain wall is very critically important to the glazing industry, and we were able to stop that. And there have been numerous Chinese companies who have worked very hard to stop that from happening in terms of allowing them to continue to come in as a kit. And they've taken their cases numerous times to the International Trade Court, but unfortunately, they have not prevailed. And we have continued to prevail in the last 15 years dealing with that. So again, tariffs, since President Trump has began his second term, new U.S. tariffs marks the largest protectionist movement in nearly a century, despite some pauses and exemptions. And one of the things that we learned in our meeting with the White House, because we also talked with their trade advisor, was that there really is an opinion by this administration that short-term pain on tariffs will allow for a long-term gain. So again, let me repeat that. The mantra is short-term pain for long-term gain, playing off pain and gain. And I think you and I would agree that we don't necessarily like that because there are a lot of other factors that are going on. We're right now entering in stagflation. I would imagine next month that the federal chair will probably reduce interest rates, which we saw last year at this time in September, where they reduced the rate by a fraction of a percentage. But I think they're going to do that now as well, just based upon the last two jobs reports. You may have heard the president mention that he fired the Bureau of Labor Statistics administrator, which is technically not a position this has ever happened before. But he didn't like the jobs reports that came out. So at his discretion, since he is the director of the executive branch as president, he has the authority to do that. But generally speaking, it's a nonpartisan bureau, and we rely a lot on that Bureau of Labor Statistics. I know within not only the ASA, but I'm sure you as NGA, but they didn't like the numbers that came out. Those job numbers are down, but our consumer spending is up, and our interest rates are up, and that's then creating this stagflation. Additionally, these tariffs have unsettled global markets, and it concerned our trading partners as the U.S. has imposed broad and sector-specific levies on imports from all of our trading partners. I've gone over some of the taxes that have been put in place. To our immediate north and to our immediate south, goods imported from Canada and Mexico that are not covered under the USMC agreement, that is the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, are subject to a 25% blanket levy. However, President Trump has announced potential increases of 35% for Canadian products and 30% of Mexican goods, and that is effective as of August 1st this week. Also, there's going to be imports on Canadian energy projects that are assessed at a reduced 10% duty. Again, imports of fully assembled vehicles just are taxed at a rate of 25%, with exemptions granted to vehicles from Canada and Mexico. 25% of vehicle parts is being phased out over 2 years. So again, we need to be mindful of this. His Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, has made clear that correcting this unfair trade and generating federal revenue to offset tax cuts and leveraging negotiation with foreign powers instead of relying on sanctions. That's kind of the philosophy moving forward. It has 3 intended uses, that is, for these tariffs by the president. And again, those 3 are correcting, in their mind, correcting unfair trade, generating federal revenues to offset tax cuts, and leveraging negotiations with foreign powers. Tariffs have already increased revenue. These are numbers. These are not made up numbers, but they're coming out of the Treasury Department. That $27 billion in custom duties is almost quadruple the amount collected in the same month as of 2024. So again, June of 2025 has collected $27 billion in custom duties, almost quadrupling the amount collected in the same month in 2024. So that is of concern for us as we move forward. You may or may not be aware of this. We support fair trade practices. We advocate for tariff policies that protect small businesses from unfair competition, especially that industries like ours that are reliant on imports for raw materials or finished goods. We do believe in the exemption process for import tariffs, and we have also been told by the White House and members of the Ways and Means Committee, along with members from the Finance Committee, we've met with several of them, that exemptions that are currently expiring or even exemptions that might be being requested. There was a big write-up today that a lot of the industries that are impacted by these tariffs that just been put in place as of August 1st are going to the White House to ask for exemptions. I'm not saying that they will get granted, but I can tell you from the conversations I've had both with the White House and members of Congress, exemptions are likely not to be agreed to. And if you're dealing with an exemption that is expiring, it's likely to be expired and not continued. Again, this is all part of President's agenda on tariffs. I can tell you right now, under the Section 301 of the trade law, that products that have received exclusions in the construction industry are the following, and that is luxury vinyl tile and other flooring products, quartz slabs and stone surfacing, plastic wall panels and insulation materials, fasteners, bolts, and specialized anchors, HVAC components and electrical fixtures, and solar installation hardware and mounts. They've all been exempted from these tariffs. These exclusions help mitigate cost increases and supply disruptions for our contractors and our manufacturers as well. And we are, working on promoting export opportunities. We do believe in trade agreements. But we want to ensure in those trade agreements, from ASA's perspective, that there's not unfair competition. There is legislation. One piece of legislation that is getting critical attention, especially in the Senate, is the Trade Review Act that would subject certain presidential tariff actions to a resolution of disapproval in Congress, basically taking away some of the power of the executive branch. And just to be clear, and I don't want to get into a big discussion about how this all plays out between Congress, the legislative branch, and the executive branch, but over the years, this topic has volleyed back and forth between the both branches to the extent of how much authority do we want to grant the president, especially in times of national security. And so we've amended some of that process, and we've given him, that is, or her, whoever is in the White House as the president, some leeway. But there is a determination by several members in the Senate, especially Senator Grassley, with his leadership, but not only being the oldest senator, but also in the Senate, but also as chair of the Judiciary Committee, and has a lot of commodities at state from the state he represents, in Iowa has taken the position that some of that authority needs to be released from the president and put back to Congress, so then Congress can determine, what the steps moving forward are. To take this a step further, one of the documents that I shared with Sarah that I'd like to share with you, because how does this tariff conversation even trickle down to you beyond just what you're seeing on supply cost? Well, one of the ways it does that is through, and we've drafted this, is on language for your contracts to consider price material escalation. And so our attorneys council worked on drafting an addendum to potentially be used by you in your contracts for work that you might be negotiating on, to add an addendum to it to deal with material price escalation. And let me just give you a little flavor of what that language would say. And again, this is just a template, something that you might be able to work off of as you're coming into these contract negotiations, because it is, in my opinion, that you will be impacted by these impacts on price for your materials and for your not only your materials but also supplies accordingly. And what the first thing it deals with, potentially time and price to impact material. Markets providing essential materials to the project are experiencing or expected to experience significant industry-wide economic fluctuation during the performance of this agreement, which may impact price, availability, and delivery timeframes. This addendum provides for a fair allocation of that risk, of such market conditions between the parties. The price set forth in the proposal shall be considered the baseline price. Adjustment in the baseline price if during the course of the project potentially time and price to impact material experiences an increase in its baseline price. Subcontractors may notify the contractor in writing within 30 days from the date of an equitable adjustment to the contract price arises, and shall provide appropriate documentation substantiating such an adjustment. An adjustment in the price for a potentially time and priced impact material shall not include any amount for overhead and or profit. So again, I offer this. There's several different aspects to this addendum that might be helpful to you, but we're not, again, looking at it only from the legislative side. We're not looking at it necessarily from the regulatory side, but we're also looking at it how we can help your bottom line when it comes to your contract negotiations, because we do believe that material price escalation will occur as these tariffs move forward, and I believe they're going to continue to move forward. And I don't believe that there's going to be any sort of extension or delay on them like there's been in the last couple of months as the president has rolled this out. Now, I'm a frequent reader of the Wall Street Journal. I read it on a daily basis. I read a lot of different newsletter or newspapers from all angles, so I can understand exactly how to navigate these legislative and regulatory issues for my members. But in last week's Wall Street Journal, in the weekend section, Peggy Noonan talked about the stopping these ICE raids at workplaces. And this has been a big concern for our members, and I imagine a big concern for you on the project site, that is the construction site. So earlier this year, ASA put together a call to action to address the construction industry workforce shortage. The construction industry is facing a critical workforce shortage that requires, in our opinion, immediate attention. We believe, as ASA members, we'll need close to 723,000 workers annually to meet current demand. And this is driven by natural disaster recovery efforts and an increased data center construction. So again, we believe this demand is being driven by Mother Nature, just by the natural disaster recovery, and then also the increased data center construction. Actually, yesterday, the top 5 of the AI companies, Alphabet, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, et cetera, all met with the president. Apple's going to make a $500 billion investment in the United States, and they call this all the AI arms race for artificial intelligence. Those data centers, those AI centers, are going to be critically important as we move into this whole AI space. And how are we going to capture that data? And there's going to be a lot of construction, and our members need to be prepared for it. And if these top 5 companies, such as Amazon or Apple, are going to make this kind of financial impact, we have to be prepared for it. So we have a workforce shortage, and we have to recognize that. So what we called for, and we've urged the Congress, is to prioritize the following immigration reforms: expanding the H-2B visa, specifically for construction companies, by exempting returning workers who have followed the law from counting against the statutory cap, making the program more compatible with construction and industry needs, increase employment-based visa quotas to allow more qualified workers to enter the industry legally, create a market-driven visa program for foreign workers that provides visas valid long enough to protect employer training investments, make visas renewable, allow employers to sponsor employees for permanent residency, set flexible caps based on marketplace needs without arbitrary restrictions on construction, ensure guest workers receive equal labor and employment law protections, and protect the DACA, that is the dreamers that were born here, and the temporary protected status, because I know in our industry we're using a lot of those temporary protected status individuals for our industry that are currently working in the construction industry to remain in the construction industry, and then improving the E-Verify with appropriate employer safeguards to create a liable employment verification system. And again, we want to see strengthened national security. We want to determine and maintain knowingly as the liability standard for employee. We want to maintain the liability standard for employing unauthorized workers. We want to understand what needs to be done there. We want to avoid any liability for subcontractors in their hiring practices. We want to set penalties that are reasonable and proportional to the violations. And we want to provide, if there is an opportunity, to a legal status for law-abiding undocumented workers already contributing to our economy. So we put that call to action together to the members of Congress. We've received, our members have, we did that through a voter voice campaign. We have received impact back from those members of Congress as to our concerns. And then one of the other items that we put together that we felt, and I'll share it with you, is we put together an ICE raid checklist. We worked with our attorneys council, specifically construction law attorneys, also immigration attorneys, and we addressed the following issues. I won't go through all of them. You have a copy. I've shared it with Sarah. I'd asked Sarah to share it with all the members here on the webinar. But here are some of the what this ICE raid checklist identifies. What are the triggers for an ICE visit on a construction site? What are the typical reasons for ICE visits to workplaces include? They may have gotten an anonymous submission or notification. Trends observed in I-9 audits, non-compliance by subcontractors. Then what are your rights and responsibilities during an ICE visit? ICE has access to public places. In the workplace, though, ICE may not enter areas for employees without permission. Make sure your workplace and projects site are identified as authorized persons only and not open to the public. ICE agents need a warrant. Employees can remain silent and refuse to answer ICE's questions. The checklist for our members when ICE agents arrive at the construction site. Number one, stay calm and professional. Control the access, which we just talked about. And then protect your employees' rights. And if you're arrested, detained, or taken into custody, these are the steps. You have the right to speak to your lawyer. You have a right to contact your consulate. Say it loudly and clearly. If you have fear of returning, you can ask to call a family member or friend, report any health or medication needs, request a bond hearing. Document everything as a contractor. And then what post-visit actions should you be conducting accordingly after an ICE raid? So again, I offer that because that is currently happening right now. on construction sites throughout the country. This is obviously the busiest season right now, the height of the season, if you will, for construction during the summer. And so we want to be prepared for that as well. Let me also now move on. I addressed this in last week's ASA today, but it's an important piece for all of us, and that is the revolutionary, I call it, FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulatory Services Overhaul for impacting federal construction projects. This has been talked about since the administration came in at the beginning of this year. They've been working on this with various members of the Federal Acquisition Regulatory Service to make some of these changes. And they'll deal with the pre-solicitation, evaluation, award, post-award, respectively, and they will change the scope of how federal construction is being handled across the board. And this is important for us because as these contracts and these pre-solicitation and bidding processes move forward, this will create a precedent throughout the entire construction industry, in our opinion, not just within the federal construction industry. So the content that was raised in this will deal with design build selection procedures, administration of change orders, which have been a top priority for many years, the Brooks Act in terms of what our obligations are and our protections, as well as looking at acquisition streamlining. Then, also what is the project labor agreements status? We don't take a position on project labor agreements because we represent union and non-union members, but the president has moved forward to accept what the Biden administration has put in place on project labor agreements. The president has not denied them. He wants them to continue to move forward, and that was identified here in the FAR. The retention for the requirement of market research for construction contracts, for design and construction selection, and then a retention for high-performance sustainable building practices. They clarify a lot in that document. The proposal is about 90+ pages long, but they also removed or eliminated the following: unnecessary definitions for the idea of a firm, what constitutes a construction firm. And so we're looking at that to make sure that that aligns with what our understanding is. A specific call for evaluation of contract performance, preparing past performance evaluation for construction contracts has been eliminated. Disclosure of the magnitude of construction projects, the supplemental requirements for sealed bidding, performance of work by the contractor has been removed. And then also other topics that have been removed from the FAR in consideration dealing with physical data, organization and direction of the work, pre-construction conference, site visitation construction, and preparation of proposals for construction. So again, that's highlighted in our ASA today from last week. We're going to continue to look at that over the next several months. At the state level, quickly, we're also, because now we have a couple of states that are looking at this, one specifically in New Mexico. Our chapter is looking at it very closely, but this all came about back in 2022 when Virginia allowed for the prohibition of paid-if-pay clauses in both private and public construction contracts. There are about 12 states that allow for this prohibition to move forward, but there are obviously, 38 other states that do not have this prohibition, and we're working on this very specifically because paid if paid clauses are vitally important to our membership. So we've worked on this in Missouri and Kansas and Illinois and North Carolina and New York and California. Those are the states that allow for this prohibition. But now that we have this latest state in Virginia, other states now would like to take advantage of that. So we've been working very closely with our state chapters. We actually have a state advocacy grant fund opportunity for that to allow our chapters take that funding through a grant that we offer to our members to take that to the next level with their state advocacy plans. It's kind of like seed money to allow them, if they feel that they're in a good position to defend this or advocate not only this subject, but other state-related matters, gives them a little bit of a financial incentive to move forward if they're in the space with contingents based on the grant. Now, the other piece that we worked on, and this goes back to Hurricane Lee or no, Tropical Storm Lee, Hurricane Irene that came through Fort Myers, Florida a couple of years ago. On our website, we put together a natural disaster page. These natural disasters are occurring at a rapid clip. I had just in my own backyard 4 Norwegian maples that were 80 years old. I did not know what a straight downwind was. I still don't understand it, but apparently 4 trees came down in less than 20 minutes at my house. And I'm contending it at a personal level, and I know you're dealing with this at a much larger level. See what just happened down in Texas, which is extremely unfortunate. But we got directly impacted in Fort Myers, Florida, like many of you did. So we took this as a call to action, and we worked with our insurance friends. Within our association, we worked with the surety bond producers. We worked with the Surety Fidelity Association as well. And we came up with an aspect within our webpage and a guidance document, along with our attorneys council, to deal with natural disasters. So, for example, we put on there federal resources for disaster preparation. If you know a storm's coming, preparing for that natural disaster, what do we need to do from an insurance side? What do we need to do for legal considerations in our contracts? We've also worked on federal guidance for post-natural disasters. Again, what are our legal resources? What are the insurance opportunities for us to be aware of? I know this came up with one of our board members. She works with United Rentals. If you have rental equipment on a job site that's part of a natural disaster, who is obligated there? Where are the risks involved? What are your liabilities as a subcontractor now that you've had this natural disaster on the job site, but you have rental equipment? What is your responsibility? What is theirs responsibility? And that's what we hope to identify on that website. And if you haven't taken a look at it, please do. I'll end with 2 things quickly, because we got a lot on our agenda, and I've taken up about 45 minutes of your time. But I want to use this opportunity to really not necessarily go through the slide presentation, but these are just all the hot button issues that are currently going on without dealing with all of our other issues that are equally as important, but they're happening in real time. And I think it's important for you to be aware of them, especially because you have this alliance with our association. As you know, one of the marquee values that ASA has is our legal defense fund. And currently, right now, we have 5 cases that we're working on throughout the country. These are opportunities for us to take on aspects of the legal system that have been creating concerns or injustice to our subcontractors. And so these cases are now in front of the Supreme Court in Colorado, the Supreme Court in Oregon, the Supreme Court in Texas, and the Supreme Court in Illinois. And it affords us the opportunity to do an amicus brief, which is a friend of the court brief, on behalf of the subcontractor that may have been wronged by a developer, an owner, an insurance company. It depends on the situation. And we're working very closely, or even a regional rail transportation authority. And we take on these cases in a much reduced cost to allow for our members to know that the attorneys that work on these cases do it on a voluntary basis. But we get together 4 times a year. And we also take applications for these cases anytime through a year. There's a vetting process. But right now, 5 of those cases are in front of those Supreme Courts I identified. And I think that's a real crown jewel for ASA, but also the people that reap the benefits are everyone, not only from the ASA community, but everybody involved in the subcontractor construction industry. I'll end with this. You may have seen the movie that just came out recently about Bob Dylan. You know, he had the song "The Times They Are Changin'" that came out in January of 1964, and here we are 61 years later, and hopefully our Congress is listening to our concerns. And I think because it still rings true today. His lines from that song, I'm not going to sing it to you, but I think that this line is very, very appropriate for all the things that I've addressed today. And it's, come senators, congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorway. Don't block up the hall, for the times they are changing. And that is absolutely true. Despite the fact that we have partisanship, Republican control across the board, that's not stopping change. That's creating more change. And how our Democratic Party is responding to that, how you're responding to that within the construction industry, is creating all that change. So thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today. The presentation that I have here is a lot of photos. I did that intentionally because sometimes you don't necessarily need to read all the notes, but the photo speaks to pictures worth 1,000 words of all the things that we're working on. And I encourage you to continue the work that you're doing. And I'm just a phone call away. My cell phone is 24/7. So if I ever can be helpful, please give me a call. I'm a little old school that way, but I find that to be the most effective. And I do return my phone calls. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Mike. There's a lot of information shared today. And again, links to all of it will be available by email, which should come in your inbox about midday tomorrow. And Mike's email is on the screen if you want to reach out to him in that way. And finally, just a reminder, we have 2 webinars coming up at the end of the month and then again in September. So please mark your calendars for those. Registration is available on glass.org. And in the meantime, we encourage you to browse the library of free presentations that we have anytime at glass.org/webinars, which is where this recording will be available starting tomorrow midday as well. So thank you, Mike, for being with us today and your preparation for this presentation. And we appreciate everybody joining the webinar to listen in, and we hope to see you next time. Have
Thank
a
you.
good afternoon.